All right, 6 o'clock. So we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. And we'll begin as we always do with our land acknowledgement statement. The Chinookan people known as the Clackamas and Cascades are the indigenous people of the land now inhabited by the city of Wood Village and other areas of the Columbia River. The village of Nechakli was located near today's Blue Lake Park. Ancestral life of these peoples included a seasonal round of resource gathering and stewardship from the Wapato fields and fishing areas of the Columbia River to the cedar and huckleberry gathering areas of the High Cascades. Introduced disease from early settlers dramatically reduced the number of these people, and they signed the Willamette Valley Treaty of 1855 with the United States government and were forcibly removed to the Grand Ronde Indian Reservation. We thank the descendants of these tribes for being the original stewards and protectors of these lands since time immemorial. We also acknowledge the systemic policies of genocide, relocation, and assimilation that still impact many indigenous Native American families today. We are honored by the collective work of many Native nations, leaders, and families who are demonstrating resilience, resistance, revitalization, healing, and creativity, and we are honored to be guests upon these lands. Now I'll have the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And before we open the floor for citizen comment on non-agenda items, I just want to remind everyone that it is a joint meeting with the Urban Renewal Agency, and I'd like to thank Urban Renewal Commissioner Stanley Dirks for joining us tonight. Now we'll open the floor for citizen comment on non-agenda items.
So there were no requests or things that came in, but we did communicate with a person today that we thought they may pop in for a comment. So I'll just share it on their behalf. So it's in the record, which seems this person's kind of intent. The name is Jeff Buffington, lives adjacent to 238th. Their backyard backs up to 238th across from Tree Hill. And with the improvement project, there's been a lot of stormwater, I'll call overflow discharge into that little neighborhood's backyards, and has been trying to make contact with the county for some time to look at it, get a resolution, and just hasn't had any response from the county despite John's attempts to link them, remind them, try to put some pieces together. So the resident was getting a bit frustrated, not so much with us, but with the county, and wanted to express those concerns. And we will continue to advocate and push for at least some kind of response and look at what's going on in that area. Did I summarize?
Well stated, and thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Greg. So we'll close the floor then for citizen comment. And Lieutenant, I'm not so good with your last name, Chubinashi. All right.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. The Lieutenant has our public safety report tonight.
My name is Jennifer Chipinashu, and I'm a lieutenant with the Marlborough County Sheriff's Office. I don't know exactly where Lieutenant Hackwell usually started, so I'm just kind of start somewhere, unless you guys have the preference.
Generally, the chief goes through the top sheet, just talks about any numbers that stick out as being more than past periods. And then we usually compare the dispatch versus non-dispatch contacts. And the reported crimes that are in the the spreadsheet. He reflects on those, and then we normally talk about also stolen vehicles, and it seems like from tonight's report that we have good reason to talk about stolen vehicles.
Okay, I'll go ahead and start with the calls for service by type. It looks like we had a little bit of an increase. By a little bit, I mean a lot of bit of an increase with the traffic stops. We went from previous 30 days average from 86 to 137. The explanation that I was given as to why it changed from the previous 86 is because of we had a couple missions that went on, and also ODOT grants. So with that, the number increased by just, if you just deduce the higher number from the lower number, it's the traffic stops and the self-initiated activity that went on. Let's see what else is here. As far as the stolen vehicles, I think we went up to 8 from 3. There's not a true explanation as to why we're seeing it. Maybe it was just a fluke in this month that we didn't, nothing occurred differently from last month, but people are reporting their stolen vehicles more often. So we went from 3 to 8 this month. So
Lieutenant, do you know if that was isolated to Wood Village or was that kind of a big jump metro wide?
I feel like it happens metro-wide. So it's not just us. I think it's metro-wide. So I don't have the statistics for every other city, but we're seeing an influx just throughout the entire year of stolen vehicles. Let's see what other numbers changed. So we have a total of 171 dispatch calls and a total of 218 self-initiated. That higher number is also because of the gun safety missions that we've been doing as well. I think we did 2 additional last month. We don't have a number of how many we do a month. We kind of just pick and choose as to when we have the availability. So last month, I believe we did 2. In the previous months, we've done more than that. So it just depends on kind of the availability of the deputies and them planning the mission. So you'll see higher numbers sometimes just because if we do those missions, they'll concentrate on a specific area and or just a specific night. And then if, depending on the call load, they might stop way more people than normal, especially on a night shift. So usually those missions happen at night shift. So you'll see a higher spike during those times when we have those missions. So.
You know, when I looked at the activity report, suspicious vehicles and the traffic stops, those are the things I know that we've talked about that will help the gang enforcement and the gun enforcement. And when I see those up, I think that's a good thing. And I think I believe that's part of the mission too. So certainly for us, for me, as I see those, you got officers out there.
Yep. And then also just people in the neighborhood just calling it stuff in. So if you see something different or weird or out of the usual, make sure you call it in. So usually suspicious activities and suspicious vehicles also, we thank the citizens of the community that they call it in, because if they weren't calling it in, then we wouldn't really know of every single suspicious vehicle out there. So if you see something like the motto says, see something, say something, just.
Yeah, those are good signs. Those are good signs about more than just stopping, but relationships too with the community. So.
Yep.
And they've been productive. We had the gun safe storage forum here back. And when Lieutenant Hackala talked about the missions that had already been undertaken, and then the gun dispossession unit talked about how many domestic violence guns they were recovering. It came out to over 1,000 weapons that have come off the street just since January. So
Yeah, we have actually a collage at our office of all the guns we've taken off the street since pretty much this whole year. They had one for last year too. So there's tons of guns that we've taken off the streets. Pretty much on a daily almost, but definitely on a weekly basis. There's people that, even if it's just carrying without a concealed handgun license, stuff like that, but all the way through criminal stuff. So let's see what's next. As far as traffic accidents, 8 traffic accidents in Wood Village. And looking at where they're occurring, it looks like the majority of them are occurring at major intersections. If you look at the list, it says traffic accidents reported between September 1 and September 30th. You'll see that the majority of those are all at major intersections. There's the exception of, I think, the Sockeye Street one and then the Elm Avenue one that did not occur at a major intersection or major thoroughfare. So the rest of them are all pretty much, and that's a common thing. We see traffic accidents, the majority of them will occur at major intersections or just an intersection in general. There's a couple of them that were not. We did not have, from my recollection, since I'm the vehicle crash team lieutenant, any fatalities last month, which is good.
usual report for us because there's only one Park Lane on there, and that's usually the bulk of our accidents are, door dings or fender benders in the parking lot at Fred Meyer.
Mhm.
And then down at Walmart as well.
Yeah, it's either Park Lane or a certain address on Halsey for parking lot hit and runs.
And then is there any specific questions you guys have about the calls for service log? Let me see how many, does it say how many we've had? I'm still learning how to read this because it's not something that we get on the daily, so. Is there anyone that you'd like more information on? I mean, I can talk about last night's call if anyone's curious about that one.
Council President Nissen.
I have no further questions.
Not from the report here.
Okay. Go ahead.
I don't have a question for the report, but I do have another question.
Okay. Yeah. Lieutenant, you ready for
Yeah, go ahead.
regular questions?
Yep.
Council President Nissen. Regular questions, not related to the report? Comments?
I don't have any.
Okay, all right.
Oh,
Council Minor?
well, mine was just did I hear you say you're going to follow up on the incident?
From last night, yeah.
So I'm just waiting for.
Mine is pertaining to the recent activity with the Reynolds High School and kind of what happened yesterday. But it seems that there has been few incidents of reported guns either close by or in the premise of the high schools. And I know resource deputies are recently appointed there. So just wanted to hear kind of any more developing on kind of how that process is going.
So, and to specifically talk about yesterday's call regarding the shooting that happened just in the park, just, what is it, west of. It sounded like a fight had happened the day prior and between some students. And then the next day they showed up to the park, not attending school, but another fight occurred in the parking lot. Some students were out on lunch and some, as in like hundreds of students, were out on lunch. And they thought it was a car backfiring. That was actually kind of a drive-by shooting. We did get identification of who one of the students might be. We tried to find him in school today. He was not at school today. So we know who, we think we know who one of the students is. It's still under investigation, but he might be on probation, which is helpful for us because then we can hopefully locate him via his ankle monitor. So I don't know the specifics about it. All I heard, because I didn't work yesterday, but what I heard is that it was just a dispute between kids gone wrong. That one wasn't necessarily focused on the school, even though it was right next, it's connected to the school because the park is connected to the school, but everyone ran off away from the school. So as far as it being an active shooter, I mean, you never know, but it wasn't yesterday's shooting was not, it sounded like a drive-by fight conflict, and then all the students ran the opposite direction. So we don't know who the other half is until we find the first half. So but we have identified somebody. As far as the school resource deputies, they did start as of last week. Today's as of last week, the Monday last week, they're involved with all this. So are our detectives. So if you have any further questions, I can follow up with you, but they're definitely involved. I mean, they try to get as involved with the students as possible, knowing who they are, where they're at, all that kind of stuff. But it's a big school. So as far as, I think there was some concerns about why we didn't shut that school down. I think we already discussed this earlier, but the students are already released for lunch. So if we put the school on lockdown, then those students who are out can't get back in, which then turns another problem into well, where are they supposed to go? So it was already determined based on the information that was gathered right at the scene, plus everyone being gone, that there was no longer a threat. And they opted yesterday, we as a sheriff's office opted not to shut down the school just in case, right? So it's, if you shut it down, then what about the kids outside of the school? If you don't shut it down, then what about the kids in the school? What we knew from video surveillance, everybody left opposite directions. So there is video surveillance that caught some of it on camera. And we were able to determine that the guy in the car, the people in the car and the person who was on the foot ran to the west. So we opted not to. It's all kind of case by case. Obviously, we want to be as cautious and as almost paranoid as possible because you just never know what these people are up to. But as of yesterday's case, whoever was on scene, whatever information they gathered, they opted not to shut down the school. So I know parents were paranoid, calling in paranoid. Some of them even drove to the schools, but I wasn't there, so I don't really exactly know. But from what I gather, it wasn't an active threat at the time that the sheriff's office showed up.
And I know you just mentioned resource deputies just being new, kind of back on assignment, so it's going to take some time. I've just heard through students, I have a daughter that attends the high school, that hearing or mostly hearing, that there are weapons at the school is something she's hearing more frequently. And so hopefully with the resource deputies there, and the work that is going to take, some of these things can be, as well as you all are focusing here, the focus can also be in the school and safety there.
They're definitely involved, and I know that these particular two school resource deputies, they're very involved with the kids and they like to get involved. They like to get to know them. So we're hoping that throughout the next couple of months, they integrate themselves in the school. And that's part of their job, is to get in there and kind of learn these students. And the only way you'll know about these things is if you go and ask and kind of befriend everybody. Right. So it's going to take a little bit of time for them to go in there and kind of gain the trust from the students, but they're working on it.
It was also pointed out at the school board meeting where they voted in favor of adding the resource officers that, the park is not the resource officer's jurisdiction. And they're not supposed to be involved in disciplining students. So they're not going to be going over there to retrieve students who aren't supposed to be there. Not making a lot of effort to stop students from going. I mean, clearly, they've already demonstrated that if there are gunshots, they're gonna, go towards the shots and try to diffuse the situation. But it's not part of school grounds.
Yeah, it's still being proactive is the best thing to look out. So I know they have a big workload ahead of them in these next couple of weeks. But it's alarming. It's alarming when your child comes home and you're asking them all these questions and they're like, oh, well. And so it's coming to a point where students are normalizing the fact of, there's someone saw another gun. And that, for me, that's alarming, because then it comes to a point where if there is a situation, how real do they take them, especially when it is something serious? And it's like that for me is just.
Well, that's, and it is, in I don't care what high school it is, it's the kids that you're going to get your information from. And it does take time for a new resource officer, but hopefully the administration is setting this up so it's a success. And kids have to know that they are the most important people in that building to keep that school safe. It's kids where you get your information. So I hope that the administration is working with the county and talking about how that trust for kids, your daughter's a freshman? Sophomore. Know that they can go to somebody and say, I heard Billy say that, somebody has a gun. And that's what has to happen to make that school as safe as it can be.
Maybe having some kind of meeting or what is it called when they have the meetings in the school?
Assemblies.
Yeah.
Assemblies. I haven't been to school in a minute, but
Yeah.
with the staff and also with the students and kind of describing that it's a safe space, because if they don't know it,
Yeah.
if they've never heard it before at home or even just anywhere, they're not going to know maybe necessarily what to do. They'll be afraid if they get it told to them, hey, come to us if you have this or this. Maybe just some kids need to hear that because they don't know what else to do. So maybe that could be a suggestion to the school, to the administration, to having that assembly, having our school resource officers come in there, having them introduced to the whole school. People might know that they're there, but maybe having them introduced might be helpful. So we'll work on that. Maybe I'll talk to the school resource deputies and see if they can maybe either arrange it or be a part of it if it is arranged, to get introduced and just kind of give them a little bit of a outline of what they're there for, because the kids might not know.
And even, parents can help out. I know there's a lot of community members that would be willing to advocate for that. Because again, it's been, since the start of the pandemic, so almost going on to 3 years where this resource, has been taken away from the schools because they were previously there. And so reintroducing themselves, I think is important. Like you said, just being present and sharing, no, this is a safe place where you can come and share whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep.
Councilor Ahmed, any questions or comments?
No.
Thank you. Staff, any questions at all?
Thank you very much for attending.
Yeah. And just to touch on the incident last night, with, you guys all heard of the incident last night, right? Where the We had a gentleman, I don't know if he's a gentleman, but some person basically hold up his father in his house at the Mobile Green Mobile Home Park, mobile home. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but and he basically stole a couple guns and ran to Portland to basically kidnap his kids, is what we gather. He has been found in Marion County, so we arrested him, or they arrested him in Marion County, and he is being transported down here. And then we'll continue the investigation, but community is safe. There's nothing to be fearful of, and it's a corroboration of Portland, us, Marion County being vigilant and kind of just catching, locating his truck, and arrested him. The kids are safe. So until further notice, I can't go into detail about the entire case, but it was a scary situation for anyone who was watching the news or hearing about it in the morning. And everything should be safe now that he's arrested. So.
Thanks for the update.
Good. Thank you. Awesome work. Thank you for the presentation time
Yeah,
as well.
thank you. Sorry, I was a little rough.
Onwards.
Any other questions?
No,
Oh,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Bennett.
thanks for being here.
All right. So next up is a review of bills paid. Does anybody have any questions or comments about the ones on the top sheet or the rest in the staff report?
I just have a quick question and so the first one for the Donald Robinson Park has that increased from previous times of treatment to the field, or is that kind of?
It had a slight increase. I could go in the technical manner of we used to be with the Hillsborough School District and now it's the Washington State Cooperative Purchasing Program, but it went up a bit of an increment, not too dramatically. It was real close to our budgeted amount.
And the other piece to that is I just want to say I appreciate that investment into our park, because not only personally through plays, but you see it, the benefit. And right now it's full of kids playing soccer. So just the investment that we're doing in maintaining that piece of land that we have out here is just, I think, an important one that we continue.
I've certainly noticed over the last couple of years, the increased usage of the fields, which is great.
And it goes beyond, the contract with Pacific Sports Turf and the fertilizing and, field treatments where, John having his team, optimize the irrigation and getting optimal coverage. We're just noticing how I'll call it the old infield of the Southball field was awfully dry. We added some heads to it, anticipating it's going to be more of a soccer area. You could already see the difference after a couple of weeks. So it's, goes beyond the contracts. It's John and his team and making it a premier multi-use facility.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Counselor. And then next up then is the consent agenda. Does anyone have any questions or comments about the consent agenda? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries. And then next up, we have what Stanley's patiently been waiting for. Resolution URA 4-2022. And this is with Greg, and it's a discussion of our urban renewal business incentive program.
Yes, thank you very much for the patience there, Commissioner Dirks and members of the Council on Urban Renewal Board. Let me just move some stuff around. Oh. All right, so bringing back before you for your consideration is a business incentive program. Again, we'll keep the background exceptionally brief because this is a recap of what was discussed just a couple of weeks ago. So at the last meeting on the 29th, discussed a potential program that essentially cover the cost of building permits and a business license for existing vacant spaces in the urban renewal zone, which essentially covers the Halsey Street corridor. There's about 20,000 square feet of existing vacant space. When discussed with you all at that meeting, there are a number of questions, concerns, comments about a potential program, and that kind of range from, what are the property owners doing to try to incentivize tenants, and I have a brief update on that. Unfortunately, it's brief. What is the appropriate level for a business owner perspective in terms of applying, and what does that look like? And then the question of the overall value and what does it bring, community, and how it fits the overall goals. So to recap the program, basically a business owner representative applies to it prior to beginning their project. This project pays for the tenant improvement permit fees, but not the surcharges. There's some timelines when they need to begin the project and be open for business. Any existing business that relocates, from part of the city, but leaves I think I used the example of Jamba Juice. They leave their current spot is vacant to move here. That wouldn't count because we're not trying to trade spaces. We're trying to fill spaces. Nonprofits wouldn't qualify because of the tax exempt status. Program would run, for a year or until the spaces are full. And then as an add-on, the application would include, a written statement. We also added, they could do maybe a video to share with the council or board, or, just come to the board itself. And we'll talk about a couple add-ons based on your comments that if you want to move forward with the program, you could look at. So based on the overall value question, because there's a potential for, upper end projects, number of units, you could put in a cap. Right here in the staff report, we put 6,000. It could be any number you want. The average permit cost would range between about 7,000 to 12-ish thousand. Any number you want. And if you do a cap, you can then also kind of do a bonus amount. And again, this amount was it was selected for a certified disadvantaged business enterprise. Think women minority owned businesses. So if you had a cap, then that could allow you to do then a bonus amount if you wanted to encourage, different businesses. And then we kind of thought, and just to frame, instead of a general statement of what does this mean to you as a business owner for this program, actually have them demonstrate how their business locating in this region, this corridor, and having the urban renewal support helps achieve city's mission vision, Main Streets on Halsey plan. How does it actually fit with what the city wants to do, and kind of frame it that way, but still have the option of a written statement, in-person presentation, potentially a video. Talking about this again, reminded the financial impact, because depending on the spaces, depending on how you could slice and dice the units, we figure there could be 7 to 8. Those are the permit cost ranges. So that's where we got the $50,000 to $100,000 potential cost. If, for example, a $6,000 cap that reduces it to, 42 to 48, depending on space availability and how they do the units. And again, that could be more or less depending on if you do a lesser cap or add on a certified disadvantaged enterprise bonus amount. The question was asked, what does this do for tax increment? An increase in the tax base. Tenant improvements, depending on what they are, do a minimum amount, especially when you look at places like the Byway, which is essentially a finished shell. There's not a lot to go in there short of specialty equipment or other things of that sort that add to the increment. The benefit is creating a vibrant space, creating that synergy around an active area, and that could spur additional new development or growth within or around the agency. So that's kind of where you see the benefit of a program like this. You're not really adding a lot to the increment because it's not a new build, but you're creating some vibrancy and not seeing vacant space. I do want to point out that just because there's a suggested motion here certainly doesn't mean that you have to take action on this tonight, because one of the things you wanted was what are the business owners doing? And while I had some conversations with the Byway owners, they haven't come up yet with what they want to do with their plan. The thought was they're looking at outfitting 3 of the, if it's 5 or 6 units, essentially making them restaurant ready with the specialty vent hoods and range hoods, some of the high cost items for restaurant spaces. Unfortunately, I really don't know what's going on with the building across the street. It sounds like there may be a lease, but there's still some discussions. I don't have any relative timeframes. And then what I call the Wood Village Burrito building, not the shop, but the building itself, is actually actively for sale. So I don't have a lot of information about what any given property owner is doing to try to bring in some tenants. I have some anecdotes and what's in process, but nothing firm or concrete. So again, you have the full ability to keep thinking about this, wanting more information, delaying it for a period. Or again, if you want to move forward with it, the amounts that were in the staff report were essentially amounts that kind of fit near what permit cost, but not the full amount. And then, adding on some kind of bonus. So open to entertaining questions, comments. What do you need and moving forward in whatever direction you choose?
I just got a general clarification here on what you said. I didn't hear what building is actively for sale.
The Wood Village Burrito Building, the
Okay.
brown one over there
Yeah,
across
yeah.
from the best, the whole building is for sale. Also want to bring up, and I meant to wrap it into the presentation. If you want to, after the first of the year, maybe even do a urban renewal board retreat of kind of, a revisit of what's in the plan, what's been done, what resources available. Again, you're the stewards of those resources. We're here to support what you want to do moving forward.
So I would maybe put forward then that when you ask your questions or make comments that you indicate whether or not you're willing to move forward on a motion and a vote tonight, or if you'd like to further consider. I think Greg, at one point in time, you mentioned that the hoods that the byway was talking about putting in had a cost of up to 80 grand.
Correct. That's what I was
So that could be
informed.
a $240,000 investment on their behalf into those buildings before they're occupied. And then we'll start down on the far end with Planning Commissioner Dirks.
Okay, I do have. Is that property fully on the tax rolls now?
Yes, we'll see it reflected in this next month's tax rolls.
Oh, okay, good to know. No, I think I'm good.
Greg, can you refresh my memory on the numbers or cap that we used for the previous?
Previous program didn't have a cap. We spent about, I want to say just over $50,000. And at that time, only about 10 to 11 was in the urban renewal agency, because the bulk of what we're trying to fill was in the town center. And there wasn't a lot of vacant space in the urban renewal agency.
Did we have a number tied to a unit, or can you refresh my memory of how we came up with costs that we provided the last time around? Say I, as a business owner, came in, how did the city determine the incentive I was going to get?
It was just, we just paid the permit cost and the business license, whatever that permit cost was. So I think it was upwards of $8,000 at the time. Again, this was, we're talking, it ended 7 years ago.
Sure.
So think 7+ years ago dollars. I think the top was around 8,000. A lot of them were in the 3,000 to 4,000 range for total permit cost. Was essentially, it was just total permit costs, not including the surcharge that was still exempt. So there wasn't a cap. It was just, we just paid the permit costs, whatever those were.
Okay.
There
And
was a cap on square footage. It was a
Yeah.
square foot.
Yeah, 6,000 square foot for existing space, thinking not wanting to use it for, a large mega development that would probably want to go through enterprise zone or potentially a different, larger program.
with that, I personally would like to hold off until we get more feedback from existing business owners, byways, and or we see what's going on with Wood Village Burrito. And we get more information from them before we make a decision.
Thank you. Council Minor.
See if first, I think just philosophically, I'd like to see our financial help be along with matching from the owners. So that's one thing about this. I'd rather tie it to,
Clarity from the property owners.
yeah, that this is a match. So I don't have necessarily any problems about the numbers here. I do like the idea of the $2,500 for minority-owned, women-owned businesses. And maybe that could be expanded to a specific kind of business that we might find more attractive than, another restaurant. I don't have a good example for that, but I think that incentive, that a bonus amount just conceptually might be able to be expanded to beyond what you defined here.
Yeah.
If it's an attractive investment for the city. I think those are my only points right now.
Councilor Rios Campos.
Yeah, again, like Councilor Minor said, I like, having that cap and then that ability to provide that bonus. My question kind of, I know the owners of the byway are currently doing something. So are there potential businesses already looking to come in?
That seems to be there's some that are looking, but those businesses are looking at the total investment needed to open. And it seems to be a hurdle. So they were looking at what they could do to lower the hurdle.
Because I don't know if it's been like public or something, but I'm understanding that the coffee shop in the Wood Village building, they're moving also.
We were told about a year ago, they were looking at moving actually to the byway and they decided to not to, for staffing. They have another location elsewhere that was needed attention. And so that diverted their attention away from relocating to a larger facility. And I haven't heard that something's changing one way or the other.
I guess I'm kind of in the same boat. Maybe we can wait a little longer just to see kind of what the owners, I think is an important piece to this. Unless there's, we have, a handful of business say, no, we're ready to kind of move in, then I think there's benefit in looking at that. But if there really isn't, and they're still waiting to see what like the owners do, but that's not really, the deciding factor, then do we really need to rush something that, that we can better develop and get better of buy-ins from the owners?
And Councilor Mann?
Yeah, I echo that sentiment in terms, we're not in a rush and we can wait a bit. I would like to also see, I know that the byway and the property owners do want to meet us there, but just, there's no rush, until we get more information on.
And I would just say that I agree with, like many of the counselors, with the cap and with the extra bonus for the certified women-owned business. It's 6 of one, half dozen of another, whether we vote tonight or put it off, and as far as my terms go. But just a thumbs up or a hand raise. Where are we at putting it off or voting tonight?
I think for me, putting it off.
Put it off.
I'd like to put it off too.
Did I,
Okay.
I didn't hear.
Neutral.
Stan was neutral. It was neither way on it.
Yeah, I don't, I'm kind of either way too. I don't know if there's is there a need to do it, that we should take action? If not, if we give a thumbs up, that tells the direction.
Well, it certainly sounds like in the meantime, I can continue to work with the byway individuals, really see what the package is. Probably ideally have them talk to you all at a future meeting.
Exactly, and I think that particularly if we were going to get to Councilor Minor's thought of, this leveraging a match, then, I would want to hear match straight out of the horse's mouth. And then, I mean, we all know where I stood from last time, where I thought that people should have to come in and tell us why. And so if they don't think that the program is going as fast as maybe they had hoped, or their plans for moving in or getting started on their business, then, because, we haven't approved it yet. And, and we aren't talking about how long we're going to put it off either. So, maybe if you want it to happen, come in here and tell us why you'd like it to happen.
Yeah.
But I think the consensus is put it off for now.
And I certainly have given enough for a framework to call it. We can have it kind of on the shelf, more or less ready to little more tweaks, but more or less wait till it is asked and not city driven or urban renewal driven. Is that a fair?
Well, yeah, and then I want to make a clarification of what I mean by match. It doesn't mean that if we go
Not dollar for
$6,000,
dollar.
yeah, then they go 6,000. Okay, it's a concept that we're here to help you.
I believe that was assumed.
Okay.
And I also I like the idea of, being able to do more than the 2,500 for the bonus, especially if it's something different than what we have, or just, really aligns with what the
So
city wants.
what would that be? Because it sounds like not, a business, not a restaurant. So what would that be? Or is that a potential future work?
I'll give him a month here to think about that.
Well, I
Next
mean,
council meeting.
the issue with it then is, you know, when you talk about whatever this can leverage in terms of a match, are the owners, you know, going to want to have any more skin in the game if we're dictating the character of the business that might develop there? You know, we
Maybe
don't,
not that.
we don't want we don't want to, you know, restaurants fine, but by the way, we'll give, you know, another $5,000 if it's what, dentist's office, insurance agency,
I think it'd be the opposite.
Wonderland Arcade.
Okay, now we're talking.
Well, I think for me, what I was, I guess, referring to is, you know, something that we currently don't have within our city. So, even though as much as I love Mexican food, you know, I think one is enough within our city limits to have. I would prefer to have a diversity, right? And so that still means kind of what the byway wants, a restaurant kind of on the
So it
end.
could be a restaurant, but
But
not what we
just-
already have, something.
Yeah, I think for me, that's what I'm aiming for, something that is, we don't currently have within the city limits.
And so maybe then if we were to if we were to adopt a little bit extra, then that is the sort of the caveat that it's a style of business that doesn't already exist in our city.
Yeah, it's, and I can throw out a couple of ideas here. What if it's a human resource firm that is training people? What if it's a chiropractor?
We already got one of those.
Yeah, but I mean,
I think this is more suited for a workshop that we
yeah, and it's,
Kinda-
and I didn't mean to
come to the table with these
to mess
ideas.
it. It was 2,500 or more. I'm good with the 2,500. I just think thinking about the option of who else might we be wise to do an incentive.
I think
And I would agree about the workshop too.
I think we've got some good direction.
That gives us all
Yes.
some time to come up with those ideas of the human resources that's training people or whatever other ideas we bring to it, to
Yeah.
bring to that discussion.
But I think conceptually, it seems like we're all there.
I think you've given me clear enough direction to continue work with the property owners themselves to refine their packages and probably come talk with you all about what
Yeah.
that looks like on their end.
At the very least, you know, invite them to be part of the workshop.
No,
Good
I,
idea.
I'm good.
They can bring
We're
home.
talking about an urban renewal agency.
I would think that it'd have to be, yeah, because
I think that's a good idea because I've been on it since day one. And things have changed a lot since our original plan was implemented. I think we did an update a few years ago. But I think it'd be a good time to just reevaluate the whole. To see, get some history on it, understand how the money flows. To me, that's confusing when you look at the increment and how it's divided up and how that affects other agencies. Maybe just pressure on how the agency works, the history of it. And then these other items we're discussing here too. I think that'd be a really good idea.
sure. No, I think that it would be good for the agencies that have surrendered the tax dollars to be able to see that we're doing something to really potentially make it a value for them, 9 years from now when the agency ends, and that they were willing to forego
Their
the fund
sacrifices
for a
were
good
an
reason.
investment.
All right, and having up, make sure everybody understands what agencies are affected and that long term when we sunset it.
All very good. Thank you very
Right.
much.
Well, Commissioner Dirks, thanks for your innings pitched, but you get a no decision tonight. Sorry.
Hey, always good time. Guys have a good night.
Thank you.
I'll catch
Thanks,
you
sir.
on- Catch you on the tube. Channel 322 for out there in You guys later.
See you, Stanley. Okay, next up is resolution 26-2022, an IGA with Troutdale and Fairview for the TGM Halsey project.
Oh, we did change it. I thought, I had an old agenda, whereas the other parks one was next. All right. I'll wait a second until Counselor Amen comes back.
Oh, yeah, please.
I know how I know how to get my computer working.
Long stroke.
Dang it. But I can't pull up my stuff now. Look at that.
Like a video game.
The long stroke, like hitting them.
All right. Well, thank you, Mayor and Council. This is really exciting. This is a whole thing several years in the making. This just one thing's 2 years in the making. So quick background just on the Main Streets on Halsey initiative for a refresher, and for those who may not be fully familiar with it. It's actually the city started working in 2015 in the concept of the main. But it wasn't until 2016 that we had active work on it and adopted the 2017 Main Streets on Halsey plan. And the whole idea behind this was looking at Halsey as a destination and hub for local, regional, and tourist activity. And so the Main Streets on Halsey plan, I like to think of it as a real detailed SWOT analysis, but instead of the T being threats, it's really challenges. So it's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and challenges. And since that time, the cities have been collectively working together and continue to work together to chip away at a lot of the planning efforts around it to get rid of the challenges and capture on opportunity. So we've already done economic assessments and what's call it more or less viable or reasonable that the corridor could handle and manage. We've refined the zoning and development codes. So actually the three cities, well, Troutdale's still working on their little piece of it, but certainly us and Fairview adopted the standards that took about 18 months to craft to both create a little bit more, I'll call it a unified look and feel with being different, but also enabling higher and different uses within the zone. As part of that, there's also opportunity site development evaluations. For ours, it was the corner of 238th where the Wood Village Market currently is and looking at what a larger mixed use development could look like. And that's provided to the property owner and considerations for potential future redevelopment. Along with, I'll call it the city's work, there's also been a lot of redevelopment along the corridor since 2017. You've got a lot more housing on the Troutdale side. We've had, the byway, the building across the street, we're planning for the crosswalks. Fairview's seen a lot of housing development and some mixed use development. So there's been a lot of work on this corridor. The current effort, TGM, that stands for Transportation Growth Management. It's an ODOT and DLCD program. We were awarded that back in 2020. It was delayed until now, and the delay was, call it COVID delays, and then, agency staffing challenges, retirements. We saw a lot of retirements and job movement within that period, and ODOT was also affected by that. So it just kept getting shuffled, but the shuffle stopped, and they said, we approve your scope of work, go forth and do good. And so what this does, it's focusing on an updated street, template or cross-section between the main segment. So think about it in blocks. So you have 207th to 223rd is kind of the Fairview chunk. Wood Village Boulevard to 244th, essentially the Wood Village section. And then for Troutdale, they're just going to focus on that 244th, not quite to 257th. They're really calling it the Edgefield corridor because Edgefield has some future plans, unique visions that want to incorporate that don't fit, I'll call it a typical street cross section. It's also going to look at street furniture and align with the ongoing / stalled marketing and branding effort. Actually, well, I'll talk a little bit more about what the street template does. So basically, you look at a cross section of a street, you have your sidewalks, your travel lanes, your other amenities. This is looking at, does the current cross section meet the needs of the corridor and surrounding area? So for example, we've heard that Fairview really wants to calm traffic a bit more and make it feel like a traditional Main Street with on-street parking. For our section, we really like and want to preserve the regional employment areas while also making it more attractive for other modes of transportation, such as, local people can feel safe walking to destinations on Halsey or biking or getting to where they need to go without feeling they need to get in a car. But because we have a lot of higher employment lands adjacent to, keeping it to a narrow 2-lane road probably not going to be the best solution. But what can we do to facilitate safer pedestrian and active transportation options? Look at what we could do for bus shelters and bus stop alignment. So that's what I mean by cross section. And in street furniture is those things like, benches, garbage cans, those components, landscaping, for example. And how can we have enhanced landscaping that's low or no maintenance ideally? So with the intergovernmental agreement, Troutdale is actually the grant holder with ODOT. So Troutdale has an agreement with ODOT. And then this IJ is between the three cities outlining the general expectations, the cost share, et cetera. So it was in your staff report, but the gist of it is that it requires participation kind of at all levels. So that's the staff level, kind of the day-to-day, well, it's going to be more month-to-month management. There's a technical advisory committee and a citizens advisory committee. And right now the rosters of those are still being, tweaked and refined. And part of that is helping fill those rosters. And then part being an active participant in the workshops that are planned. I think there's about 3 or 4 planned over the next 12 or so months. And while you do not have to adopt what comes out of this, there does need to be at least consideration, meaningful consideration of what comes out of this / even looking at if it doesn't quite fit, what would make it fit for adoption. So the total cost of this project is just under $200,000 and the city share is $3,671 payable to the city of Troutdale. So we did have a staff kickoff last week, and that was just talking about the general schedule, the general outline, next steps. And that's what I said, it's really about crafting the technical advisory committee and citizen advisory committee rosters. And the hard part is, there wants to be a lot of involvement for people with different lenses and viewpoints. But when you have, specialty committees, don't really want them more than about 12 to 15. And one of them was already pushing about 40. That's really not an advisory committee at that point. So there's a lot of work of how to interject the right kind of input and feedback to craft some of the options and alternatives. So right now it looks like we'll have kind of the first report and workshop after the first of the year. And that's generally on the existing conditions and opportunities and challenges. Around the springtime, that's where we'll see kind of the first set of redevelopment street template options and alternatives. And then through the summer will be the outcome is a 10% engineering plan. So that gives enough to give a general sense of what it is and some rule of thumb pricing if you want to move forward then in developing and further refining the actual engineered plans and cost estimates. And then the adoption wouldn't be until about a year from now, give or take, or adoption consideration. So that's the general process. There's also going to be several open houses and other types of events outside the TAC and CAC. And I think that's where the consultants, and they brought on specialty consultants, one specifically for community outreach and engagement, what's going to be part of the CAC and what's going to be, robust workshops and, workshop experiences for people. And I think that's where we're just spending some time aligning that up front. So everyone's expectations are set of who's on a CAC and what that role is. And then how do we make sure we're hearing a lot of good voices?
Council President Nissen, questions or comments?
I don't have any questions at this point.
Councilor Minor,
I have no questions on it.
Councilor Rios Campos,
No questions.
Councilor Amend.
Just to clarify, you said something about sidewalks is that something that's being planned along Halsey?
So, most of the corridor has sidewalks, but you'll notice just past here, it doesn't. And that's where we call that the Edgefield segment, because they would really like to keep, I'll call it the rural feel, while having safe pedestrian or bicycle movement, along that section. But they're looking at taking it actually fully off street, whether it's like a meandering trail or something, just I'll call it off street. Which doesn't typically fit standard street template designs. But yes, there's an active interest in connecting people to and through Edgefield. That's not on the roadway.
And then Greg, in our Thursday meeting, one of the things that you pointed out, besides the, sort of ballooning size of the CAC, was that they wanted to have non-technical people on the TAC.
It seemed like it. I'm trying to remember specific groups that they thought
it was a bicycle alliance that they wanted, like the executive director.
That's right on in that one. I thought there was a couple others, like the person they wanted from TriMet. Well, that was a person that does public outreach for TriMet, and it's like, well, if you have TriMet, it should be who does bus stop design and location work, and what makes a good bus stop, if that's going to. There were about 2 or 3 more that didn't quite fit. I get where they were coming from, that they wanted people that had, specific call it ideas or concepts, a lens, like they do this thing, they want it on the TAC to inform the TAC of what's needed. My thought is, well, that's kind of where the CAC sits in. Because
Exactly.
the technical piece should be, engineering, rules and regulations. And that's where I think they wanted someone from Metro that deals with, again, outreach side, and said, well, it should be the person from Metro that actually deals with the technical land use transportation side. So it's still being flushed out, but yeah, the goal of the TAC would be it's the engineering type people, and the citizens one are the citizens one that have active interest in a variety of areas.
Okay. So yeah, I would just encourage us to keep pushing on that. And then also looking at the schedule across the meetings, I wonder if it wouldn't be beneficial to have kind of those as 3 cities, and each city kind of takes a corner of the room with their pictures and does their dot exercise or whatever. But it seems like that, now we're looking at, 6 nights individual, 2 for each city, I think is what was in the plan. And,
Yeah,
I wonder if it could be narrowed down to 2 meetings altogether.
hopefully. I mean, I think that's the goal is, and I think that's the challenge, find a space large enough to hold, a space where it's here's this segment and here's this segment and here's this segment. Here's how they align and here's how they're different and here's some elements. And maybe since Edgefield's a partner, they've got a lot of nice event space. A nice idea. I'm gonna write that down.
That's all I had for question or comment. I'd entertain a motion then on resolution 26-2022.
I move to approve resolution 26-2022, authorizing the city manager to execute an intergovernmental agreement with the cities of Fairview, Troutdale for the TGM project to continue the work on Main Streets on Halsey Initiative.
Okay.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks
Thank
very
you
much.
very much.
Right. And then next up, we have a update on the last Parks Commission meeting with John.
Kept it warm for you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, City Councilors. We'll give Greg a break for a while here. So Greg and I met with the Parks Commission on September 27th. And I provided a staff report on some of the topics that were discussed and some of the outcomes or recommendations from the Parks Commission. Some of the topics, park signage and garbage receptacles, multi-purpose field restoration, restroom access, and basically providing them an update because it was council guidance that we keep the restrooms open 24/7. And hopefully, like tonight when we leave here, you'll notice the lights are on in the restrooms, doors are open. We maintain the restrooms daily. So lighting is 24/7. Because during the daytime too, they were kind of dark in there, and really we discussed safety as number one. So that's why we made the investment to have the lights on 24/7. And also too, we install heaters, I believe it was last winter. So no issues last winter. We had fairly mild winter, except for around March, April, we had some cold weather. But so the restrooms, we discussed that. We also discussed the Wi-Fi and solar bench installation, splash pad, mainly around splash pad, the usage of the splash pad and the hundreds of thousands of gallons that are getting run through our splash pad. Tree planting and tree assessment. You'll see later on some of the recommendations also, but we currently just completed a tree assessment near the Cottonwood area. adjacent to the southwest corner of the park. 8 to 12 trees were identified as hazardous. So we're currently working with securing a contract to remove some of those trees and also look at other hazardous trees around the park for removal for safety purposes.
John, is there, if I can interrupt real quick, is there a plan for some communication with the Cottonwood residents as these trees get removed?
Yes.
I just had a fear that we go in and even based on an arborist advisement, we go in and start removing even 8 trees, we're gonna have an uproar and
Well,
if we can
according to
get ahead of it with the neighbors.
Yep. According to, I believe her name's Kitty with the Cottonwood HOA.
HOA, yeah.
They are going to be happy that these trees are removed.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's kind of originated. from Cottonwood.
They've been a big advocate for
Even
these.
better.
Yes, we have been in communication. So this has been ongoing and we've observed some of the trees and we thought, well, why not just get an arborist in and get an assessment? We have them mapped out and we have a plan moving forward.
Great, thank you.
But we also have an opportunity for some tree planting and that is just south the City Hall property here, running north to south, adjacent to the wood chip trail and possibly maybe a staging area for parents and children when they're doing activities in the multi-purpose ball field. There's no shade. There's no shade in that area. And one of the recommendations was, providing shade for some of the visitors and activities that go on in that area. So more to come on that. Future multi-purpose field use, some of the community outreach, and our staff has began, molding that and putting that together, and hopefully we'll release it here in the next 2 to 3 weeks. CDBG project, we went over the project there with, it's going to be a design build. And so we thought it would be more cost effective to get a contractor in here to provide the design as they're building it, rather than put an RFP out for design, then put an RFP out for the construction. Why not do a design build, save some dollars? CDBG funding is limited. It's about just under $80,000 this year. And then I believe we also from the general fund allocated $30,000. So right around $110,000 for the CDBG project, which will add some amenities, park benches, maybe some barbecue pits, pads for additional picnic tables. Removing the south backstop at that ball field and do some upgrades on the northeast corner backstop and ball field.
And then when you're doing those, John, the ADA is already baked into it. If we're going to add park benches and picnic areas, that it'll be ADA accessible.
Maybe not 100% because of the slope on some of the areas, but yes, there will be ADA accessible picnic tables. Yes.
Yeah, there'll be more than exists today. How's that?
Yes. It's just with the slopes, it makes it challenging for 100% ADA accessible picnic tables. And then we also provided information regarding the wood chip trails, the arboretum, some of the work that staff did around the arboretum, and it looks wonderful. And playground, the engineered fiber chips, that is ADA accessible. So some of the signage that was discussed, one of the recommendations was larger font on the signs, utilize more international symbols rather than letters and wording. So this particular sign is a new sign at the Hawthorne Trailhead that the framework was actually put together by our staff to bring in that wood effect rather than the old green and white sign that was back there. So, but one of the recommendations from the Parks Commission was larger font less lettering, more international symbols. They like the idea of the solar benches and the Wi-Fi. And as Greg, I believe, stated the last council meeting, average 20 users per day for the Wi-Fi. And one of the recommendations for Wi-Fi was possibly,
You're stepping on my presentation. It's next. I haven't talked to him yet.
Oh, okay. All right.
All right, that's got covered then.
Yeah. No, it was possibly, limiting access. So again, these are just recommendations from the Park Commission that are now forwarded to City Council, and you can take action or no action, move forward or not move forward. Again, it's just me providing that information that the Parks Commission, provided the feedback.
Did you say limiting access?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to whatever, whoever else.
Apparently, Mr. Dirk's access has been limited.
Well, I'll wait for
Microphone.
the rest of the story.
Opened, I'll touch on it for the moment. So it wasn't a recommendation from the Parks Committee. It was one of the members asked, what time is it being used? And we don't know, and we'll get into that a little more at the next presentation, that we can't drill down by hour. Second, the concern was really about who is using the park, call it evening or, late evening hours, and what that use is. And the concern is having open and available Wi-Fi incentivizing nefarious uses. I just want to make it clear that was one Parks Commissioner making those comments. That wasn't the board, and there really was no discussion after that of, yes, look into that. No, don't look into that. And as it turns out, if we wanted to turn it off from us to say, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., we'd have to physically unplug it. That's not like a setting in the program. And that was people seem to like the Parks Commission. Overall, Wi-Fi is good, nice amenity. It was just one person asked, could you limit it? Because I'm concerned about who may be in the park, late evening time. And does this incentivize them to come here at that time? Thank you.
And that member testified about seeing people in the park in the late evening time, which means that he was in the park late evening.
Yeah, it might have been mentioned crossing through the park as a shortcut and seeing people in the park.
So another comment was made that the best solution was to put lights in the field.
But lights, what?
To put lights.
Lighting the field.
Specifically on the field.
Specifically on. Nope. Mostly on the field.
Yes.
Pointed towards.
Moving away from the Wi-Fi and right into the multi-purpose field. We're actually with our new public engagement and enhancement position. Caroline is currently working with staff to come up with some outreach materials. And so hopefully we can get lots of feedback from our community and park users, what they'd like to see at the park. And one of the recommendations was lighting for the multi-purpose ball field. Here is a list of the recommendations. Again, I touched on the larger font for signage, utilize international symbols on signs rather than lettering, support planting shade trees south of City Hall and Civic Center. That was the north-south chip trail adjacent to that, and actually give provide shade for park users at the ball field also. Limit Wi-Fi access, limit splash pad hours of operation. So I provided them with the same detail I did with my last month's Public Works Director's report, which was the consumption of water at the splash pad. And that was one of the, again, things that were brought up was maybe we shut the splash pad, put a timer on it and shut the splash pad off at night.
John, is that something we can easily do? Or is that somebody's got to come in at 10 o'clock and unplug it and plug it back in at 7 a.m.?
Someone's at least going to have to reprogram the whole entire system.
Yes, it is possible. Again, but how many people are using the splash pad at 10 o'clock at night?
And thinking more nefarious activity
Yeah.
and kids will be kids and we have somebody that figures something out at some point and causes a whole bunch of water usage.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very happy that the kiddos are out there using it and playing around, but can we prevent an issue?
I think if we were to see nefarious activity at the splash pad, it would be someone trying to plug up the drain, not so much with extraneous water use. And because it only runs for 5 minutes at a time, they'd really have to keep pressing it all night to cause any kind of outward problem. But yeah, I'd be more concerned about plugging the jets or plugging the drain versus pressing the button.
And you have to be in it to press the button.
Well,
And it's freeze protected.
Cut somebody's
Right.
hand off and put it on.
We shut it
a
off.
Stick, but Councilor Rios Campos can correct me if I'm wrong, or staff too, because there, I was there as well, and it didn't seem like there was anywhere near sort of universal support for limiting the hours of the splash pad.
I think the most that came out of it was that, I think Greg, you mentioned, or John, that the splash pad runs like in 5 minutes increments.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
to lower it instead of 5, 3. I think that was the bulk.
I think
the
that
big
was
thing that came out of the
Thing
discussion.
related to splash pad operation, what would it look like if? And I think it's probably a question to ask after another season and kind of see what the use is. Talk to those that are using it, because this was really the first full year of its use. And I think a lot of us are just happy it's resonating with people. Now I think it's refining it.
And I'm sorry I left out Councilor Mann. I believe she was there as well, but that was about the only time that I interrupted from the audience, though, was that limit it to the number of minutes would probably just cause more pushes. Because the kids are going to be in there when they're in there. And so, it's at least in my mind, I do the math, but it appears as though the decline in water usage would be negligible.
Wear and tear on the button.
Yeah.
If that's what we're worried about, where it tears, like maybe during peak times, we lengthen how long the water goes.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, waiting for another year of use too is a good, and maybe some other ideas will come up. It sure is popular. We know that.
Okay, so a year from now, we'll bring back more usage information. One of the other recommendations that I thought was great was adding distance markers to the wood chip trails. So I don't know, starting the back of City Hall and maybe every 500 feet, we put a marker, or every 1,000 feet, just so folks know. Some folks are trying to get steps in and exercise, and I think to me, that seemed like a great idea.
And Parks Commissioner Mark Clark, thought that instead of calling it number of feet or number of miles, that you actually call it steps.
Oh.
So at this post, you've done, 225 steps, and at this post, 450.
That adds some fun to it. I like it.
That'd be a clever idea.
More to come on that. Public engagement should include local schools. That was one of the recommendations. Additional dog waste stations, additional garbage receptacles, assessment of hazardous trees and remove, add lighting to multipurpose field, additional mapping. And we are working on some additional signage and mapping. Additional signage near the entrance, a low profile sign not to block the view of City Hall and Civic Center. That was one of the recommendations, because right now it's just bare grass in that corner as you enter the City Hall main entrance, or the park main entrance.
Curb bulb out. I talked with Greg about that after the Parks Commission meeting. I was wondering if signage or things like that would even necessarily be the way to go, or if we wouldn't want to just, get rid of the monoculture and put some, native sort of drought resistant plants in there and make it, just appear more nature made than man made.
Great. Bring back Wood Village Community Pride Award. And that was something I was kind of looking into myself, looking through some old files. So that was one of the recommendations and basically they had, was it 3 different categories?
Well, because so the old program had several different categories. This was kind of it seems like every few years it has starts and stops because there's enthusiasm for it. You award to the set of homes or businesses or what have you, and nothing really goes past that. So then it fizzles out. The idea also was this, well, what about for holiday decorations? What, kind of what about seasonality components? Something to think about and discuss, but it's also, I mean, you as a council could say this month, we want to recognize this place or, this home for, we noticed, wow, they did a lot of improvements or they really dressed up, that rundown place. There's nothing prohibiting, taking action in those cases. We just don't have a formal program at this time, but we've in the past had 2 separate programs and they tend to last about 3 cycles.
And actually Greg and I were talking about that at one of our Thursday meetings, and that's how we actually matured to having a Citizen of the Year award discussion and ultimate approval because I was canvassing homes and came upon a particular neighborhood that had probably never even been considered, that maybe nobody even looked in during past programs. And one of the homes had just done a remarkable job. They had replanted their own grass and they had flowers and they had gnomes and it was very bright and inviting island and sort of the middle of some disrepair. And so that's kind of what made me think about it at the time. But Greg's right. I mean, I was on council. I think the last time we did it was when Pat was mayor. And the recognition on the signs, I think, came from the mayor. And so it has been quite some time since we've done it.
So again, something to just think about. It was an idea, recommendation that was brought up. And lastly, create a focal point, a photo shoot spot. One of the ideas was utilizing Bigfoot around the park. Another one was a topiary. Maybe at the front or somewhere in the park to take pictures and kind of a focal point for folks to come see Donald Robertson Park.
Just to condense that, it was Bigfoot cool, topiary weird.
That's exactly how that went down. And it wasn't just one Bigfoot. It was a big Bigfoot out front and then little Bigfoot spread throughout the city for people to find.
And potentially joining this sort of network that already exists of the Bigfoot believers who kind of make these tour treks to get their pictures taken with those statues. And so it seemed like there was a potential link to things that are going on in other cities as well.
But topiary was weird.
Topiary was.
So again, this was just a list of ideas, recommendations that was brought up during the Parks Commission meeting. Some of these items are kind of already happening, like garbage receptacles, I believe, in the bills for this month or this agenda was garbage receptacles. So we're adding more. The CDBG project that's up and coming. We can't move forward until we award the design build, and that will be, have to be through a resolution with city council. So, but some of these projects are moving along. We're looking at, hazardous trees, removing them, always looking for areas to enhance tree planting. I know that is one of the APP items for several years now, and one of those projects that we should really look deep into and where can we enhance the users of the park with shade trees next to the ball fields and next to the walking trails. Any questions, comments, concerns?
Council President? No. Council Minor?
No, I guess a comment on the restrooms.
Yes.
As we're leaving those open 24 hours, can we get just maybe an annual report at the end of the year about how that has gone? Has there been damage? I had a brief conversation with the mayor. So I'd just like to know if that's,
How many times the button was pressed to?
no, not, I don't care about the button. I just want to know if in fact, restrooms are an attractive nuisance for damage. So that's the only thing, and I don't need a report right now. All I want to do is just,
But I can include that in my year-end report.
yeah,
Sure.
If that's one of the topics.
thanks. That'd be helpful.
Absolutely.
And I think without, diving into the details, I don't think we're not seeing anything that we haven't seen in the past when they were open limited duration. There's nothing been new, shocking or otherwise.
Good. That's good to hear.
Right. Counselor Rios Campos,
No questions. Thanks.
Counselor Men.
Yes, I guess, just to kind of echo Counselor Minor's, I think with some of the comments, like someone might pee in the edible garden, someone might do this, like this, like what if someone does this, like it's difficult, I'm sure, to manage, like what if someone does that, but also it's important to me to balance with, access to restrooms and access to the things, that we have, especially the Wi-Fi. And so I can wait to comment on that. All I have.
And I just want to go on record for, thanking the commission. They've filled the dais. I think there was only one member missing. It was a really robust turnout and good discussion. So I just want to say thank you to all of them for being there that night.
Well, and then I just say the comments, the recommendations here. That's a pretty extensive list and people are thinking about things at the park.
Wow.
Again, it's about sharing information and providing you.
It's helpful. So
information.
I would compliment them for their work here.
Great. Okay.
Thanks, John. Thank you, John. Next up is a discussion that we've already had roughly half of with Craig on Wi-Fi usage.
Yeah, thunder stealer over there.
Well, maybe you should have read his report.
Go. All right, so we are here to talk about, essentially a 6-month update on the Wi-Fi project at the park. So quick background on his city's history with Wi-Fi is quite accidental. At our old building, I mean, my old building, not the temporary space, we had Wi-Fi. Was that 2012, 13, 14, somewhere in there, we installed Wi-Fi in the building, mostly to facilitate in-use Wi-Fi. So guests coming in to present could connect to a network to get the materials, or someone coming in to do business. It had the effect, though, of leaving the building as a wood frame structure, and the signal passed nicely through it. And when we didn't really know its total use until the day we moved and turned off service, and we had people ask, what happened to the free Wi-Fi? Because folks at the bus stop, adjacent to that, were using it quite frequently, became a nice service for them. Shortly, thereafter with COVID, we really, saw where the need is for reliable internet. I think between, libraries, schools, restaurants, those types of places where it was a stopgap for people to get reliable internet. When those places closed down, it really saw the gaps in coverage for folks, and that people didn't have internet. Unfortunately, the building we were at that time, concrete, server room way far away, plus the location wasn't best to try to add a spot for people to get, come here to get your Wi-Fi. It just wasn't optimal, but it was made a priority for this project. So we put in 100 synchronous speed to put that in perspective of, something real. So 100, that's upload and download. So the time it takes you to download something or to put something, send it over the web. 100 means you could either upload or download an HD movie in about 5 minutes, an entire music album in about 5 seconds. So that's the speed we're talking about. To put it in further perspective, I'm not sure if it's a good thing or bad thing, but the FCC classifies broadband as 25 megabits download, 3 megabits upload. If you've ever worked on 25 or 3, that's really not broadband. And this, I want to caveat the 100, that's a total connection. So if you get 100 users at once, it's going to be a bit slow. If you get what we generally see, and I'll show you some numbers any given day, it's quite the nice, robust little system. It is an open network. So that means there's no password. You find it on your phone or device or tablet and say, I want to connect to this. It'll take you to a little landing page with terms and conditions. And those were in the staff report. Mostly, please don't do illegal things is essentially it. We couldn't do things about adult-oriented materials or otherwise based on, constitutional rights, and we're a government agency and we can't reduce free speech. But we could say don't do illegal things on this network. And by the way, it's an open network, so people may be able to see what you're up to. When they click, yes, it actually goes right to our homepage, which is kind of a cool feature. People know we have a website. And we have 2 connection points, and you'll have a map, but one's just straight out here at this parking lot light, and the other is near the garbage enclosure to help get coverage for the park. And that total cost is just around $78 a month. There's some, taxes and fees, so it's not quite a round number, but $78 a month, and that's total cost for both locations. Here is a terrible sketch of the coverage area. The 2 red dots here where the antennas are. And yes, I did, cross it out the park boundary. No, that it will kind of bubble out this way. But the signal degrades when you try to go through structures. I mean, if we're in the back of the building here trying to get onto it, it's not a good signal. So, I mean, it degrades pretty quick. Same with on Halsey. No, it does bubble out a little further. But generally, if you're in the playground, you can get it. If you're out in the field area here, you can get it. Once you get past here, it's a pretty weak signal, if at all, because the building starts blocking that line of sight. But this is the relative coverage area, which happens to be the relative coverage area for a lot of our park use. And how we have seen the use, so steady increase since launched in March, especially kind of over the summer months when we get more park guests in general. Our total use has been 730 gigabits with 772 unique guests. And so there could be people using it every day. So the total number of uses is much larger than 772. Our max user was actually 179 gigabits. But if you spread that over a 6-month time, and that we don't know if they're logging on every day, every few days, it's just under a gig, which is actually the average when you take total use over guests, and actually the report breaks down what the average guests use. It's just, which essentially is about an hour of some sort of video thing, to put that. And that's not HD. HD video is about 30 minutes or less for a gig. So this is about an hour that just of normal. And I had Becky pull an additional report just this afternoon about where are people going when they use this service. No surprise, Facebook, YouTube, what was the other?
Snapchat.
No. Snapchat. Yeah, that thing. So a lot of the social network sites, nothing nefarious, nothing shocking. And that was, just a top 10 list. So people are using it kind of open and readily, and that seemed to be a nice accessory to the park. So in general, we're just planning on continuing to monitoring it, making sure that it's open and available for everyone. There's no abuses of the system. Let people know it does exist, because some people still may not be aware. I've noticed been in newsletters, our website, social media postings, which just a shout out to Caroline with her postings. I mean, certainly Emmeline built a very nice foundation, and Caroline is just going with it and crafting not just a lot of posts, but very meaningful, timely posts. Did a wonderful one yesterday for Indigenous Peoples Day. I'm not sure if people saw that or not, but very well done. So we'll continue to promote that we have Wi-Fi here, as well as some places to charge phones. And really, it's just what questions do you have? When do you want more information? And what information would you like to have?
That's President.
I'm thinking an annual report, just kind of an annual summarization of everything is great. I don't have any questions. Thanks, Greg.
Councilor Minor.
Just a question, you can tell who's using, and we can tell the numbers. Can you tell anything else about the the use, age or anything like that? Or
No.
there's
No,
no data like that?
it's based on,
IP address.
yeah, IP addresses on
Okay.
devices and such. So it can tell you like types of devices,
Okay, no, I just wondered if it was.
right, Android,
smartphone,
iPhones.
Was it the 4G or 5G?
But no, it's not collecting specific people.
Into people's stuff.
Yeah.
Well, you know, that's, I mean, well, I wouldn't be suggesting that.
I can say that again. No.
Yes, I will repeat that. The reason I was asking that is getting the idea of who's using it. And those people that are using it, is it, and then you've answered the question about social and that aspect, but if there's a need for either broader use of it, is why I was asking the question. So we don't need to start the hacking program. So anyway, no, I don't have any other questions.
Councilor Rios Campos.
Just kind of feeding off the expansion, kind of the detailed design and the layout of the coverage that you shared. It'd be something to think about, as I would think a lot of this usage is by parents that their kids are, playing, so they're distracting themselves while their kids distract themselves. But we could look.
Is Facebook living their kid playing soccer to grandparents?
Maybe, but if we're looking at that, then, there could be a conversation to expanding some of the coverage into the field, as we're also looking to, extend amenities out in the field. So other park benches and things like that. So when there are gatherings, people can, still be able to share these pictures with grandparents or whatever the case may be. For me, would be just something to consider, as this is a good, coverage area, but looking at the field and how the usage is increasing, it'd be, something to consider.
Yeah, maybe when we rehab the baseball diamond, maybe have the right leading edge of the backstop, another signal enhancer on the top of there or something like that.
Potentially, because the signal comes from this building, and that was, as we were building, we're able to add conduit to facilitate, a clean transition. So we do have a stub out kind of right in this area here.
Well, it looks like we got the report here that would help us make that decision in a year with this kind of information.
And then, potentially, working of adding an antenna, on the backside of the building, potentially, so there's certainly options. Not quite as easy as this first iteration, but there are options to expand it for the park.
And we do have cabling to the locations where the cameras are. We just didn't necessarily want the building right off the bat.
Yeah. And I think
could go up later.
And I think another year of data can, either support that or say, well, maybe we just keep it where we're at.
Year of data, how the field, the multi-use field is progressing and transitioning to where are the guests and where is the need.
Yep. Get complaints from people that are occupying themselves on the far south end of the field. Yeah.
Well, what really is funny would be kind of ironic. And I should have extended the picture. If you look at an aerial of where the little environmental learning center is or amphitheater, it looks like a Wi-Fi spot.
Yep.
That's right.
In the rings, it'd be kind of funny to put Wi-Fi.
Yeah. Awesome. And Councilor Mann, any questions or comments?
Just a comment. I just think this is such an important amenity for our park, and I love hearing that, like, obviously we don't want people doing illegal things, but I love hearing that people are just using it for normal stuff, Facebook. And I mean, it's kind of our living room. So having people on, social media and able to connect, that's such an important part of community, is being able to connect like that.
And it's kind of, to caveat where the report's based on, gigabits consumed, not necessarily, sites visited. So if someone's exchanging email, trying to find employment or get benefits, that uses such little data that wouldn't ever really pop up in how people are using it. So there could be a lot of, other things. It's just data consumption wise, YouTube, Facebook, those were the popular ones. But certainly I like to believe, email and conversing on all sorts of matters is occurring as well.
I guess my my concern is less about if people are able to like log on to look for jobs, you know, like it's just an important part of the human experience, especially now after COVID, to be able to access the internet for free. It's a really important service, so.
And I think the other benefit is them having to agree to terms and but then, you know, landing on the city's page. You know, so that could be also a tool of engagement. Hey, would you like to take a 5-minute survey or whatever the case may be, that they have that option as well there.
Yeah. And I read an article today that said that still 24 million Americans don't have broadband. Some of them it's because they don't want it. And many of them, though, it's still cost related. That free would clearly be the best price and the only price that would motivate some people to get it. And so, and that fits with the data that came in the county's municipal broadband report, and then also in the Mountain Cable Regulatory Commission's community needs ascertainment study as well. And so in fact, free was identified as the best cost in both of those reports. And so this is you know, to the extent that some of our citizens number among those 24 million, but they want to have it, then this is a remarkable service.
And we are still part of the Regional Broadband Coalition. Doesn't quite meet as often as it does because there's a lot of strategizing right now about how to get qualifying projects coming from federal dollars for a broadband, I'll call it initiative. So it's not just access, training, devices, et cetera. So still a lot of work. We're still plugged into that effort. And if people saw the latest Fairview Little newsletter, Fairview has now actually adopted a little computer training program a year after we did.
It was.
All right. Well, if there are no other questions or comments on Wi-Fi, then we'll go to our discussion of the council retreat facilitator with Greg.
So one day, 1 year, I will stop yelling retreat when we talk about this, but it ain't this year. So here to talk about kind of, you know, that the annual retreat. For some of you, you're well seasoned in this. For other of you, this is or still relatively new. So the purpose of the retreat, which we've done for over 12 years now, is a full day, you know, workshop, semi-casual environment where we get to know each other outside of this type of setting. We talk about a variety of topics from budget, master plans, hot topics of the community, what could shape the next year's annual performance plan. And it's really just a time to discuss those priorities, projects, and get to know each other a little differently. So we hope to get out of you this year is, you know, I'm assuming this is the location. So affirming the location, maybe some date or date options to look at, facilitation, and the general agenda. So again, we're assuming we did it here last year. It was wonderful. We love the space. So we're assuming we don't need to go offsite for our retreat, and we can also, again, live stream it very effectively. No one feel free to just interrupt at any time as I'm talking. Typically, we hold it around mid-February time. Last year was a bit later. It worked. It was a little difficult on the budget end, trying to then craft everything coming out of the retreat into budget. So that mid-February time is the optimal time. And so looking at the dates this year, that'd be February 11th, 18th, or 25th. Those are all Saturdays. And the typical times, you know, 8 to 4. Sometimes we get done a little early, sometimes a little later. Pause here for thoughts on dates and time. I know you won't necessarily be on council per se, but typically we've invited at least previous councils back for the morning, talking about, you know, accomplishments, opportunities, challenges, the like.
He's just happy that it's after January. Let's see.
Any of those dates, you know, scream at you one way or the other, or?
11th or the 25th work best for me, childcare wise.
11 works for me. The 25th, 18th.
Turns out
That's it right now,
we're wide open.
right now.
11th and the 18th works. 25th, I'm gonna be out of state.
I don't have kids or a life, so any one of those Saturdays. is
Now,
likely good for me.
now. And you don't know where you'll be.
I don't know where I'll be.
We'll zoom you in.
Well, yes, could you, when we decide on a date, would you please try to make an appearance?
I'll see what I can.
Well, if I heard correctly, sounds like the 11th is the optimal date, so that's what we'll target, the 11th. Facilitation, a lot of reasons to use facilitator. We've often used one. The only time we really didn't was the very first one. And that was a little difficult to manage the discussions and the outcomes, as well as when we spent pretty much the retreat talking about the design of this space. We actually had the architects more or less lead the discussions that were coming out of that retreat. Otherwise, we've used a facilitator. We've had, I believe, 3. The last 4 have been Mike Abate. I'd say generally it's gone well. There's always a concern that things may go stale, either from a facilitator's perspective, from a council perspective. Try to reach out to Mike to see if he'd even be willing. We played phone tag. He didn't say he would, but he didn't say he wouldn't either. But certainly would like to get your feedback on, would you like a facilitator, which is recommended? If you don't want Mike, what would you look for? What do you want us to highlight in an RFP to bring you back some options?
Anybody want to go first before the mayor? I know I usually start down here, but he's not planning on being with us. So Councilor Minor.
Well, I said about the same thing last year. If, facilitators do go stale, and you get tired of doing the same thing, with the same group of people after a while. But I think first, if Mike isn't feeling like he's stale, I mean, by now he might have an opinion on this that says, I don't think I want to do it anymore. I'm not excited about an RFP. I would, if we're not going to confer with Mike, I would like to know the facilitator and know the track record. And if somebody's had experience with a facilitator, if another city has used a facilitator.
Well, that would be part of the RF, references and.
So, if I don't want to go in cold with a facility.
No, it would be,
I want to see something more than what they might show us on a response to an RFP. I want to be able to talk to people that have used them and that. So. And bring back a council.
Thank you. And then Councilor Rios Campos.
I guess for me is, I think I was a part of the last 2. Yeah,
Yep.
and so those last 2 did have a focus of DEI, and so kind of what would be the focus of this year's retreat? Would that be a piece of it, or would there be kind of another component? Because I think that would also help identify the facilitator or like that RFP, what we're seeking for. So I think for me would, identify at least what's a topic or kind of something of that nature, and then from there.
And so jumping ahead here is, as from a staff perspective, what we thought would make for a meaningful retreat, both listening from what you've all talked about over the past, year to 18 months, what we've talked about. Certainly it seems that you call it the recap has been beneficial for everybody, kind of highlighting the past year or year plus. Kind of a standard one, discussion review of the mission, model, values, and goals, especially the last few years. Those have really been refined and recrafted and kind of reformulated. It's been very valuable. We thought this year an actual team building component, because there's a newer counselor who hasn't been part of retreat, and there will be a new counselor as part of this. And so we thought that would be a meaningful bonding experience for folks. We really like doing the 5-year financial projections and thought that could lead both well into an update on the community outreach and engagement effort, kind of what results we've gotten in and where things seem to be headed, to help formulate what do we want to do the next 3 to 5 years. We spent a lot of time focusing on redevelopment of the old City Hall site, the building of this one. what is that next thing or things that are important to the community, to you all to accomplish in the next several years? And then how does that feed into the APP? So from a staff's perspective, that seemed like a big chunk to tackle through a one-day retreat or workshop. So if that helps with the general agenda, go back to and that seems to be something that any general, I'll call it facilitation organization, should be able to handle, whether they have, it's this person or that person or this team. There's nothing unique about that agenda. It's unique to us for the specifics, but the general topics, some team building, visioning, those are pretty standard components.
Councilor Mann? Yes.
No, I don't.
All right. Okay.
It's a fun day, if that helps.
It sounds like it sounds.
It generally is. There's still at least one DEI sort of item that I'd like us to consider. We talked about it briefly at the last retreat and then in the recap of the retreat, but we didn't adopt one. And that's an anti-racism statement. And so it's clear where the city stands. And I think it would be a nice companion for our land acknowledgement statement as well. I believe that for facilitators, the way you've described them and Councilor Minor described him as getting a little stale is true. And also to the extent that the facilitator is also sort of a recommender or a compiler of the ideas with some insight on how to adopt them, it becomes a little one note. It's Mike has reached the same point that Sam and Parati reached, year 4. And so that seems kind of like where we make our change. And John Morgan we had, but that was a specific leadership focus that the council wanted to undertake. But I do have a recommendation for somebody to direct solicit when we come up with the RFP, and that's Martha Pellegrino. And
You have to email me that one.
yes, she did the last 2 MHCRC retreats, and even though they were digital, even though one day was 8 hours in a dining room chair on Zoom, they were marvelous. She's an excellent facilitator, and she's done a significant amount of work for the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde. And so, if we had some potential questions about synergy, if she were able to divulge, then she might be valuable in that fashion as well.
Well, I like hearing about other options and experiences and if you've had with this facilitator who is also facilitating for the tribe.
Yeah, well, she's done legal work for the tribes. Yeah, she's been employed by them on projects. So she might have some insight that she's able to relate. But just a thought.
So it sounds like there's interest in going out to see what's out in the market for a different facilitator.
Yeah.
No, perfect. And so we'll definitely use call it this. I won't say this agenda. What are the thoughts on this agenda? Also, certainly, like as Mayor said, the thought of an anti-racist statement sounds like a great APP item to advocate for and to put on the plan.
My thoughts on this agenda is that the facilitator, one of the things that Mike has done and a good facilitator would do is to contact each of us with a series of questions. And that's going to the agenda already looks like it's a 2-day agenda, but leave some space in there for the conversations that emerge from the conversations that the facilitator has had with us.
And that might be part of, we call it a 5-year plan, could just be, future plan and what does that look like?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, although that one will be, it might be a repeat, for at least one counselor who's only in year 2 of the 5. But there'll be 2 counselors that have not heard it before. And I think that, we will by then have gone through potential new rate structures and the rate analysis. for water and sewer, right? That
Yes.
will have passed.
Yeah, I'm
by
not
then.
sure it'll be completed by this time, but we're kind of treating that as a separate effort workshop.
Right, but I mean, if it were, then when we talk about what the utilities look like going forward and how we might use that new rate structure to do increases, then maybe we could talk about, how to shape pricing where there's maybe a little bit of a decrease or a way to save water to get your bill down and what we want to do with that new rate structure. Because, honestly, the only, and I would say consistent, it's not like I've heard it 50 times in 10 years, but it consistent from the standpoint that I do hear it is a complaint from our citizens is that our water and sewer is expensive compared to the places that they have lived before, including folks that have, moved here from our Troutdale or Fairview neighbors.
And I think Troutdale is going to remain the only exception. Everyone else, if they were to live in those places today, it is not the same as it was anymore. This council, other councils were very diligent in keeping up with the cost of living to maintain our system. Others took the approach of we're not going to raise rates to look good, and future councils, administrators, managers are
not looking good. Double-digit increases.
It's tough pills to swallow that are going on in a lot of jurisdictions on utility rates.
Yeah, or just, yeah.
The awareness.
Well, when I first got here, I thought our method was sort of unusual. Now I see a different water bill that's close to $1,500 a month. And it's the same way Corbett bills, a flat rate, and then your use is over the flat rate. So, it's not like it's strange, but we did have the year where, well, we've had multiple years where we put all the increase on sewer. And we had the year where staff came up with a way to pass more of the increase to business because our residents can't use less and lower their bill. And so I just hope that, the rate structure might spur a discussion about how at the very least they might be able to do that. But then, also, what's our relative health? What's our capital position? I would never advocate no increase, but if cost of living was 7% instead of like 2.5%, are we in a position where we don't have to adopt the whole 7%, without, making the mistakes that other cities have where now they're doing double-digit increases?
And hopefully in the next month or so, we'll have better clarity on the timelines for when you'll see back the master plans for the updates and capital needs, and that feeds then right into the rate piece. And so hopefully we'll start seeing that winter time.
Yeah, the plan is we have a meeting later this month with Keller. The plan is in November to start bringing in Donovan with the financials.
Cool. And Greg's, not wrong. It actually is fun. There's a lot of laughing and Mike had some great icebreakers and there's lots of food and, we take breaks when we need them. And so it is a good day.
It feels like a retreat. It doesn't much feel like you're hearing me talk all day.
Great.
So in general, how does this agenda feel good enough to at least kind of be the basis and then kind of can be refined certainly as the facilitator crafts, something more? Great. So we have it here on the 11th. We've got our topics. We'll let out some proposals for RSPs and please send me the email for the one person because I couldn't spell that name.
Sure.
So we'll then bring back, once we get some proposals back and costs, we'll bring those back to you to make the decision if we feel comfortable facilitating the treat. And last year we thought we would do Jersey Mike's as the main food, but they weren't open yet. Would you like Jersey Mike's this year?
No doubt.
Basically a big sandwich platter, not one big sandwich, but a lot of little sandwiches.
Oh, a sandwich that went from like this wall to the door. That would be pretty cool.
Also, too, if there's any other recommendations for a facilitator, please let us know.
Yeah.
Email me if you've worked with others or heard, I heard this place had a great, workshop, send me that contact. Or we could just do a sandwich from that end to that end. And when the sandwich is done, the retreat. So we're kind of like a timeline.
I have two facilitators that might, so I'll send you their information and then you can reach out.
Perfect. Yeah, because we'll put together a little scope and things and we'll just send it out.
I may have one, I just, but
Great.
Food options?
Yeah.
Jersey Mike's okay?
This is great. So is the Village Burrito, my other favorite place.
We've done that one in the past, actually quite a few times. It's been good.
Really any food, but
True. Like, you know, snacks for the morning, then there's like lunch, then snacks for the afternoon, and I'm not allowed to pick out snacks because I treat it like I'm a 12-year-old on topping spree.
Kids would beg to differ, so I would encourage Greg to do again.
Yeah, that's right.
Dad of the year.
Donuts.
I also eat like a 12-year-old.
Oh, yeah, he doesn't have to pick the donuts, but everything else.
I mean, you always get
Just
like,
might be okay.
there's always some bananas or an orange.
There's a fruit.
Yeah.
nice.
You'll have tons for Mikey.
Oh,
You'll
yeah.
have food for Mikey.
We are a happy family.
Yeah, well, there you are. Yep.
And Mayor, before you adjourn, I have a couple more things to just add on quickly, if that's okay.
Grab it.
First, the three city council meeting has been confirmed for the 18th. So you'll get an agenda and packet probably Thursday. I was pushing till tomorrow. It'll be here at 6:30 to 8. And again, you'll get more information, but the focus hopefully will be more directed towards fire services than other stuff, but there'll be some other stuff, just FYI. But trying to focus it on a three-city effort around fire services.
You said 6:30 today.
6:30 on the, I will send an email. The other thing is I sent you the email, I felt like it was last week, so I'm assuming it was last week, about ODOT tolling. And if you would like kind of more of a formal presentation on an agenda about, I'll call it what we know so far, because we are a partnering agency. And so we're getting a bunch of materials and have the ability to provide, you know, some more detailed feedback. It was designed that feedback would be due by the end of the month. That's been delayed EBD. So there is some opportunity to put together a council presentation, some information to provide some kind of response back to ODOT and the other partnering agencies. And is that something you would like to have?
Delayed.
It's, Greg, we're gonna have to make a response, right?
We
As a
don't
city. Well, I
have
mean, you
to.
can- Yeah.
And I certainly could craft one. Also, this is a big regional discussion, and it seemed worthy at least to ask you all of what level do you want to be involved with in crafting the response?
Well, I think we need to understand it. I don't think we need to go through slide after slide after slide, but I think it'd be important for the council to just understand
The
what
concept.
tolling is going to be about, because it is going to be a controversial
Well, and it's
push.
and it's
Yeah.
levels. I think that's a good point. Because it's not just tolling, it's congestion pricing,
Oh, it's, yeah.
plus corridors, plus, I mean, there's a lot of layers. So
Parking Downtown. I mean, it's
Yeah,
five
yeah.
different ways
Yeah.
that it's a tax, all right? And taxes, I don't mind paying taxes, but not everybody feels that way. But I think it's important for the council just to have a working knowledge of what this is going to be about.
Well, and that I echo that. And I would also say that we don't release a statement unless it's something that we agree on unanimously.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
then, because, one of the things about my end of the ideological spectrum is that they often go through a lot of work only to come to what? Nobody likes this? Nobody wants to pay for this? You've got to be kidding me. And so, to the extent that we land at a place that's kind of slow your roll, then, we should all agree on it.
And that could be a response is, some things still are, undefined or ill-defined or is too squishy for, some responses. So it's whatever response you feel comfortable, if any, providing, however that may look.
And what we could do too, and John is back on the John, as we sit through more conversations on this, we can glean some stuff and maybe just have that available at meetings. How I'm thinking about digesting some of this
Right. Yeah. And as I get that information, I'll definitely.
Yeah, I
pass
mean,
it.
you're gonna get, one of the things, you're gonna get stuff at staff meetings and then I'm gonna go to a mock. And it may sound different. I hope that's not happening.
Might be
very often,
sugar-coated.
But anyway, but I think, again, just a working knowledge is probably important if you're an elected official.
Yeah, so I think we can put together, I'll call it a 101, kind of what we know so far and what we know as far as timelines. We could put that together. I think that'll have to be the first meeting in November because your next meeting's pretty full up, but hopefully a great presentation from joint office is scheduled for that meeting. So.
You know, and once again, you know, you could end up with, you know, initiatives by boards and electeds, or you could end up with, you know, ballot measures for people, but we're going to be inundated again by people that want our money because this tolling deal is probably going to coincide with urban flood safety, water quality district, you know, going out with their ask. And you know, to those people that think that people don't have bond fatigue or that their ballot is not a shopping list of what they can afford, you're nuts. I was on a call last night, in fact, where I was being laughed at by other elected officials and their staff for saying that Wood Village should not be burdened by the urban water quality flood safety district, that we've maintained the levees by the people that made the stupid choice to be built in a floodplain and have them pay for it themselves for a long time. And there's no reason we couldn't go on doing that. Or if you want to continue to use the Portland airport as your excuse, then make the whole state pay for it, because we're not sending a lot of, you know, traded sector business out of Redmond. You're not flying to Paris from Eugene. And so, you know, if the airport is the biggest deal to protect, then everyone should pay. But yeah, they were laughing out loud at me and they were trying to talk me down. So I started yelling, as I'm wont to do, because they clearly didn't understand what I was saying. And sometimes they do when I say it louder.
Perfect. I think I've got good direction for that one. Then my last piece here, just we had talked about it briefly on and on about you know, our appointed boards and how every year certain positions come up for renewal, and the thought of letting more people have an opportunity to present. Just wanted to get your quick take on ground truthing. That's the year to start this, that essentially any open seat is open. Those that currently, you know, hold it would have to apply like anyone else. And any kind of special consideration you want to have for those who are holding one that may feel slighted that they're being asked to actually apply instead of, do you want to continue and not having to do another step? So just wanted to do a quick ground truth before we launch the November newsletter where we would advertise open spots.
It's it's interesting, you know, when a president gets elected for a second term, they actually have to ask their cabinet to resign. And so that they can, you know, reappoint them or reappoint
New people.
someone else. And so I think that, you know, we may reach a point where we just have to, you know, have a resolution that everyone's term is up. But at the very least, I would like to stop just putting people on consent agendas because they're currently in the position and their term is over. And then, you know, approving a consent agenda and all of a sudden they've got 4 more years. And maybe we know that they wanted 4 more years, or maybe we don't. And, you know, and if the quality of their service has been poor, they don't show up, they're confrontational, whatever, then, you know, maybe we don't want them back. I think that Gresham could be an example, and maybe we bring in East County Rising to give a presentation. There was a lot of dismay with having no process and just reappointing people. And there were counselors that said, well, you know, we try to make calls. We all have our friends. We sort of rely on them, but we don't really have a system. And then East County Rising made a presentation on what does it mean to serve your city? And 80 people, 80 Greshamites came to it. And so I think that we should have some public outreach on what it means to serve your city and just, find out if there are, more people that might be interested in spending the time and doing the work. And maybe we get some fresh commitment and some new ideas out of it.
I see no reason why they shouldn't have to reapply for another term. Your city council does.
That's true.
There's no reason that everybody else can't fill out, whether it's just a short form that, hey, I want to re-up for another 4 years on XYZ committee. And if they're the only ones and they are a contributing member and they're not missing a bunch of meetings and a problem child, if you will, then that gives council the option to go with someone else. But everyone on this side of the dais has to reapply every 4 years. I don't see why anybody else should necessarily be any different.
I didn't know, I guess I hadn't been tracking that their name goes on a consent. I think
Yeah, we just automatically react.
And it'd been something we've been working towards the last couple of years, and the thought was do it this year, and thought we'll just double check. And it sounds like that's yes.
Well, I think I thought, like I said,
We're already doing it.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I think the community outreach aspect, the study we're gonna do can be an opportunity as well. Identify more of those individuals.
And it may not be this year, but next year or the year after, as we've seen more interest, maybe it starts with an event and then it turns into parks and then it turns
I
into
think it's
planning and then
critical.
council.
To get more people involved.
Well, that, and I think just kind of like the mayor saying, we need a process, whatever that process is, but that we can say, this is how we're doing it.
Yep, I think the idea was basically call it, open application period in November. They go on your December agenda for interviews or consideration, call it, and then, you appoint and they move forward January.
And we could, this is probably a topic that we could settle right now, but I think it'd be a good topic for the retreat too, because it really does fall under engagement and how we might shape this. But I believe people should have to reapply.
We'll certainly try it for this year and see how it goes.
And the other thing related to public engagement that I'd like to talk about maybe at the retreat is that, I partnered with Councilor Glantz from Troutdale and Councilor Lawton from Fairview and Councilor Rios Campos here we put together the houselessness forum that we had in January. And I basically put together the gun safety, the safe storage on my own. Greg is the primary staff, all the staff did work, but Greg's the primary staffer that worked the events by being there and by monitoring the YouTube channel and kind of monitoring the clock and just keeping things flowing. And so I'm wondering if maybe we don't discuss how community outreach could be less staff oriented going forward and more council oriented. And that some of these things are, actually are forums. I mean, the DOT exercise for like Main Streets on Halsey, that should still be outreach with technical people there and, small group type communication. But if you just want to do something high level, like this is what it means to serve your city, these are the boards and commissions, this is what they do, these are the openings, then that could very easily, just be a forum.
Sure. I mean, I think it depends on need staff. I mean, if we need staff to be here to do certain things, and if staff wants to participate.
Heard from Councilor Amanda.
Councilman.
Oh,
Amendments and questions.
Okay, great. We'll move forward that way. That was the plan. Just thought we're all gathered, just double check. So that was all I have.
I got two things. There's a walking tour on 257th, coming up Friday.
Friday.
From 3:30 to 5. And if anybody else is interested in going on that.
What's the route? Is it south to north or north to south?
No, it's we're going south from Cherry Park. south to start. And it's being.
Not too uphill. I was just afraid of it. Too much uphill.
Bring your skateboard.
Yeah.
You know, but it's, the reason I'm bringing it up is that it is, that's one of the projects that, is going to be focused, for improvement, that stretch of the road there. So they're really looking for ideas. And so, I can be there, and I don't know, I think you just said you might be there. You will be there. I don't know what you said.
No, so I
Oh,
was
it's, uh,
conducted to be for the community
Oh.
engagement. one.
So anyway, that's just out there if you're interested, and I don't have any other details yet, but Greg will have them. And he can get them out to us. And the other thing, the dates for 2023, have we got a calendar yet for next year?
We were just going to assume, because we altered them for a council member who won't be here past that. We just assumed to go back to the second and fourth Tuesdays.
Okay.
But we tend to bring that one in December.
I know,
And we're
but
very
I'm,
happy to,
I'm making plans for.
I think the default was go back to the second and fourth
Okay,
Tuesday.
That's all I needed to, that's close enough for me now.
We only did the Thursdays as in like a reasonable accommodation.
Yes, well, you know. It was well worth it
Well, yeah,
accommodating
yeah,
him.
yeah.
We did all that accommodation.
Yeah, it was reasonable. Yeah. And then, I have a question for the council. So about, a month and a half or so ago, I, invited the, Chair Kafori to come out for a beer. And, only about a week and a half ago, we set our date. And it's the 18th at 7 PM. So that's, a half hour into the three city joint council meeting. So, I'll let you guys decide. Am I calling the chair to reschedule, or is it okay that I'm not at the three city gig?
You should invite her here.
Yeah, is that just
It's as much as a social, it's as much a social as it is business, but I have some definite business to talk to her about.
Mayor, I don't, Best,
Yeah.
probably night.
All right, I'll try to reschedule with the chair now.
See, my take was, what's going to be discussed at the three cities will be discussed. What it is, meeting
Well,
time with the chair doesn't happen all the time.
And another full disclosure is that after the fun run, I had a chance to speak with Philip Morley, the city manager for Fairview. And Greg can tell him that I did sort of take on the whole council when I was speaking to Philip to say that when we talked about the three city meeting, that we wanted it to be fire, that we have often talked about not shoring people up. And so if we're going to talk about three city partnerships, it should be to do new things that we don't currently provide. Play East is a prime example, not mow other people's lawns because they can't afford a groundskeeper. And then that the reason that it's fire is because, when we did this study in the past, 2013, to try and leverage, some changes or concessions from Gresham by pointing out the viability of other service models. That study was done for us by Portland State, and it took nearly a year. And we've only got 5 years left in the contract. So
Unless it ends in 2025.
So if we wanted to do it, or so 3 years left in the contract. So that's a third of the time that we have left if we wanted to do another similar study. Or even if we wanted to undertake a study of just one model that the three cities could come to agreement on, we're running out of time. And, just you look at the tenor of the recent Facebook posts, for instance, that have come out from the city of Gresham or Gresham Fire. They seem to have a plan about the service delivery that they want to provide going forward. And they haven't talked to any of their customer cities. And I say customer cities now instead of partner cities, because it feels like less and less we're being viewed as a partner and more as a burden. And that they could either at some point in time tell us you're going to pay this or pound sand.
And they just confirmed their new chief, that was the interim. And aren't you on a board?
The Four City Fire User Board.
Which hasn't met in about 6 months because I put this,
Every time there's a meeting, they have an oopsie daisy.
And that's,
And the Gresham chairs that meeting, I assume.
Yes,
well, yes and no.
yes and no.
The chief comes
Uh-huh.
and he has, supposed to have data on response times and the character of calls for all of our cities. But like say, there hasn't been a meeting. And the IGA says they're supposed to be
quarterly.
quarterly. Yeah.
What about the other city managers from Fairview and Troutdale? Aren't they have a concern about that?
Apparently not like we do. Well, I mean, I guess I will say Troutdale's already taken action on their Public Safety Advisory Committee to do a subcommittee on public safety contracts, including law enforcement and fire. Not sure what they're gonna do.
So I don't know if if you're not gonna be there, I just wanted to.
No, I'm gonna come. I'll call the
Because I just wanted to be clear in my head that the fire, our IGA or whatever we got with the fire district,
contract with Gresham.
the contract
Yeah.
aggression, that's done in 3 years.
Yeah, June 30th, 2025.
Yeah, that's a short window.
And
We
it
better figure out.
it doesn't seem there's a lot of urgency from other participants.
And
Figure that out.
that needs to be the one. I mean, because some of the reasons they might want to change policing is pride and politics, go back to their own bureau. And quite honestly, a lot of the outreach that we get from Under Sheriff Nicole Morrissey or Lieutenant Hackala is just to see if we're okay with our service. Because the other two cities maybe are complaining about an issue, or there's something bothering them, or there's something that they want to change. And, quite frankly, all of the councils that I've served on have been happy with the service. We've rarely had a complaint. The last time there was any sort of big row was actually like 2006 when Ted Wheeler was chair of the commission
was going
and
to
wanted to end
cut patrol.
partnerships, the service partnerships that the MCSO had. And so, not only are we generally happy with our policing service, I really don't want to get lumped into discussions and, be guilty by association. With the sheriff about, wanting to change service, because quite frankly, that's just not something that we want to do.
Well, I don't know, using collectively, we now, Mayor, be careful because I think it'd be insane. But those kinds of questions need to be answered at the council.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
But we all need to understand that and I just absolutely be insanity to do something different than the law enforcement we have right now that is in all cases the best in the state, maybe the best in the Northwest. I
No,
don't know.
and it is a great agency and Greg has and past city managers have done some of the sort of the back of the napkin math. And it's pretty easy to illustrate that we couldn't even get 24/7 policing, full-time police
The
officers.
only reason we have
Three of them.
some carryover is that we're not
Yeah,
where we have our personnel costs are contracted.
Yep.
And we sign contracts. If we didn't have that, we'd be broke.
And you look at some of the things you may hear as this comes up is that, Fairview's paying $2+ million and they're just, essentially a little over double the population and we're paying under $500,000. Well, we have essentially a one-page contract that says we'll respond to need. They have a huge document that dictates specific hours, number of deputies, sergeant, command staff, a whole slew. And Troutdale is very similar. So our contract is different. So you can't really compare it to apples. Say, why are you paying a quarter of what we're paying and you're only just under half the population? Because our service expectation is you're here when people need you. And we get more than that.
But the reason theirs are like that, they had their own police force. And when they merged with the county, that was a fight within their own communities. And, so their situation.
Loss of
there is different.
control.
They probably had, they had that kind of
but-
language. We have never had a police force.
I was canvassing Troutdale in 2015 for the bond and met a lot of people. They're like, great.
We better go.
They just charge us to build a new building. and now they want to give it away. So you're right.
Okay.
All right,
So
we are adjourned until next time.
all right, we got